Okay, it has to show everybody.
Okay, am I in? Hello. Hi. Thank you all for coming to listen to my speech. My name is Caitlin McKinnon. Okay, does anyone know what passive resistance is? A shout.
So passive resistance is kind of like passive aggressive, but you're not really wanting to say anything, you're kind of neutral on things, or you don't want to say something, but instead of aggressive, you're just resisting against anything.
Huh. Right.
So like passive aggressive, but not the aggressive part, opposite.
Opposite,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So passive resistance is when you're essentially thinking that love and truth are your most powerful and supreme like ethics of your life, your morals. So one person that actually created the passive resistance movement was Gandhi. Does anyone know about Gandhi?
Yes.
Okay, cool, all of you. His real name was Mohandas Gandhi. They named him Mahatma Gandhi, and it means a great soul. So he was a great soul, but he was not always a great soul. He was born October 2nd of 1869, and he essentially created this movement because when he was younger, he used to steal from his family, and he used to eat meat. He would go kill the animals himself, which, great, if you're gonna eat meat, you'd think that was the best way to do it. But then he started to feel guilty. He actually harmed one of his family members, just like playing around and stealing from his cousin. And so after that, he vowed to never do it again and to change his whole life. So from there, he became an adult after his teenage years of kind of like going against internally what he really thought he should be doing. So as he grew up, he was from Gujarat, India, and they were taken over by the Britons. So they were under British rule. They didn't have their own Independence Day or anything. They were not independent. The British essentially was micromanaging their country. So Gandhi was a lawyer, he was an artist, a writer, and a politician. The reason that he was a politician was to go against the British rule. And so when he was in the seat on his chair of politics, he would constantly fast. So if they were doing something that was going against India and their crops, you know, like taxation on their crops, then he would fight against it to give them their independence. So he was constantly fighting for India's independence. He started movements where if people were fighting against him, I mean, millions of people were in this movement, and they were shot, they were imprisoned for going against the government because they weren't independent. In this British rule, he believed that truth and love, like I said in the beginning, were the supreme values, so that you, me, we should value these things because that's the best way to get people to understand you and get people to essentially give you what you want, was to be passive rather than aggressive. So what he did was he led movements of thousands of people, and they walked the streets of India until their crops were able to be theirs rather than taxation theft on their crops. So what Gandhi did was discriminated the farmers to go against British rule. So what they stopped farming, they stopped selling their crops because the taxation literally was stealing from them. They had nothing that they were able to do on their own and go off on their own. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. I see.
He was known as the father of their nation because during his life, he was the one that really stood out, that never gave up. He led peaceful protests in cooperation with himself and his people, so he felt like British rule was only working because the Indians were in cooperation with the Britons. So once they stopped cooperating, they were able to move forward, and they were making progress to get what they want. The people followed Gandhi and trusted him that his methods would work better than being violent. So millions of people walked the crowds. They were all arrested together. Some were shot. Gandhi was arrested, imprisoned, released, and arrested again. And so he literally continued this until on January 26th, India had their Independence Day. So this this all led up to Gandhi being the father of a nation and being able to lead them into their independence. However, he was shot and killed at point blank range in 1948. He was 79 years old, and his killer looked him in the face and said, "You're the reason that the Muslims and Hindus are weak, and that India has its weaknesses because of you. So we are not strong anymore, we're not," essentially he was saying violence was the answer, and that the peaceful protest made India weak rather than stronger, which in reality, Gandhi changed millions of lives and gave them their independence. So he was unfortunately shot and killed for what he did, but he continues to change people's lives, as you know, with yoga and meditation and peaceful protest. People still follow what he did hundreds of years ago. So I think that's pretty amazing, and that's why I did him as my person of interest. Thank you. Hey, what did you think?
Made me want to go do a peaceful protest.
It made me nervous.
It was great.
Couldn't tell.
All right, see you later.
Lies.